like to share some thoughts on First Thessalonians. It's a letter that Paul wrote, and here's the context. He visited Thessalonica and did some missionary work there, and it got so bad, his persecution, that he had to leave. So he left, and then he later sent Timothy back. Timothy gave a report, and this is Paul's response. And he said, Thessalonians, dear Thessalonians, I thank God for your labor of faith and your work and your perseverance. For you know that we came to you not just with words, but with the Holy Spirit and with conviction. We really believe this message. We didn't just present it with our mouths with words, but we really believed it. And we had the Holy Spirit backing us up, giving strength and giving more than just words. You imitated us. Paul went there to show them how to follow Christ, and as they were developing into their own, they followed Paul and imitated. And Paul sees that as a good thing. He said, "You were also examples to those in Macedonia," because those churches needed examples too as they developed into their own. So he then said a great thing. You ran away from idolatry. Idolatry in Thessalonica and really everywhere in the whole world is rampant, even in our world today. People look to a lot of different things other than God for to fill that void in their heart. It's not just idol, but it can be anything, any person, any thought, any ism. And then in the second chapter, Paul talks about how they preached and had a lot of persecution, but they kept preaching. And the preaching was not out of falsehood. They had good theology. It wasn't out of bad motives, and it was out of purity. And they said God had us preach this message. It wasn't just us, and we didn't come to you with wanting to get rich, wanting to get famous, wanting to make a name for ourselves, but make a name for Christ. And he said a great verse, "For we loved you so much that we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel, but our lives as well." So they were engaging the people and not just informing them. They were loving them with their lives and the message. He says, you know how hard we worked for you. We worked night and day. He was not to be a burden. So missionaries are not to be a burden to the people. They're to take care of, find a way to get finances so that they don't have to, hey, can you give me furniture? Hey, can you take care of all this stuff? So he goes on to say, you know how we lived among you. We lived in purity and good behavior. We went there to encourage and to show believers how to live. He praised the Thessalonians. He said, "For you believed the gospel that we preached. You took it as it was, God's real word." And then Paul shows his love. He says, "We wanted to come to you again, but Satan hindered us." And I don't know exactly what that means, but he said, "For you're our joy and our crown." He says, "We sent Timothy to encourage you, to build you," and because he was a little bit afraid that after he left Thessalonica, that all that has been built up, the tempter might come, they might fall into temptation, and everything just kind of stops. And that happens when we choose temptation over God. Just the spiritual life stops. Maybe not the spiritual activity, but Timothy went to fill up what was lacking in their faith. And that's what we as missionaries try to do too, is identify, maybe from a different perspective, maybe from the Holy Spirit's guidance, hopefully, what is still needed to fill up. And then Paul says, overflow with love. That's the first and second greatest commandment. Overflow with love for God and for your people, for Jesus is coming. And so, next video on a stick, I want to share about 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, great chapters.